well teaching you a framework called Local Energy Action Framework and how to utilize this framework to prioritize all types of clean energy projects you are thinking about doing in your city or county. I know it can be overwhelming, but I'll try to talk it slowly and use as many analogies as I can. So first of all, for anyone who's not familiar with RMI, our full name is Rocky Mountain Institute, and we were founded in 1982 as an independent, nonpartisan, and nonprofit. And we have offices all over the world, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. So a very big, important thing our team is doing is to help connecting federal funding resources with local communities and help you all think through the best strategies to plan all the clean energy projects. So after the introductions, I will still appreciate a little visualization of where you all are on the map. So just a little bit practice on using the annotation feature in Zoom. If you have never used this feature before, if you can hover your mouse over to the top of the screen, you can see there's a view options button. Then you can see there's an annotate feature and you can choose any stamp like a heart, a star you want to put on the screen. So just use a stamp to indicate where you are on the map. I'll give people like 20 seconds. Let me know if you have any issue finding that annotate feature.
I'm not seeing it. You said it's in the view?
So if you hover your mouse over to the top of the shared screen, you can see like you're viewing Union screen, and there should be a drop-down button. If you click on that, there's a annotate button.
There's like three little dots to the right. It says Union Liu RMI screen and then three dots.
No worries. Mary, I got you. I can help you put.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I'm not seeing it.
No worries. Sometimes it requires Zoom updates. So just a little fun exercise to kick us off. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I can see there's most of you are in this area to see Quinn, but there are dots in the north. Awesome. Okay. Next slide. I will clean up the current drawing. So how familiar are you with clean energy projects? On the left side is I'm totally new to this topic, and on the right side is this is my everyday work. So where are you on a scale? And Mary, let me know where you want me to put you.
You can put me right in the middle.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I've seen all the people saying they're new to the topic, but don't worry. That's why we're here today, just to teach you some Energy 101 as well in the beginning. Wow, we have Taylor all the way on the right. Awesome. It's super helpful. And last question. Okay. Why are you here today? So we have several options here. So I want to learn Energy 101, I want to learn best practices and so on. So I would like you all to pick two options here. Your top two. Or you can just say my boss asked me to be here, so I don't know why I'm here today. So people want to learn what tools to use to plan this process and best practices from other cities and counties. Awesome. Cool. Thank you, guys. This is super helpful. At the same time, please turn off the annotation feature on your computer, because in the past, some people actually forgot to turn it off. So during my presentation, there are like constantly people popping up any stamps on my screen, but not a big deal. So just a kind reminder there. Awesome. I haven't seen that many people saying that they want to learn Energy 101, but just in case, since it's a new topic to some of you, the first section will be a brief overview of the electricity system in case, you haven't been working on those clean energy projects on a day-to-day basis. And then we'll be talking about a tool called Local Energy Action Framework developed by RMI, just to give you a sense of like what kind of framework we can utilize to guide our city or county's own planning process. And then I know you all like case studies, so we'll be sharing what other cities or counties have done in the past to utilize this tool. And then just in case you want to create your own city or county's leaf, we have one section about that. And then I know federal funding is probably all of you have already working on it or like have already received it. So the last section will be how to use LEAF to guide your or prioritize all the federal funding application. Awesome. So speaking of the electricity system, I know some of you might be familiar, some of you might not. But overall, I would say the electricity system, we affectionately known as a grid. So it is the largest machine in the world. And there are three main portions of the system. The first part is generation. So it consists of things like large coal plants, hydro dams, natural gas peaker plants, solar farms, wind farms. And those are usually located dozens, if not hundreds of miles away from where the electricity is utilized. And then the electricity generated here is transmitted to instantaneously through the large high voltage transmission lines to substations. And the substations step it down to a more usable voltage and distribute it to the individual users. So you usually sometimes see next to highways or railroads, those giant towers with ton of lines are those substations. And in the end, we have the distribution systems. And every single thing here you see happens instantaneously because any electricity that's being consumed is also being generated somewhere at the same time because there's very little storage in the system. So within this grid, there are two energy markets. So one is wholesale market and the other is retail market. So the wholesale market covers the left-hand side of the chart, which includes generation and transmission. And retail markets pretty much just covers the second half, where power is delivered to the consumer over distribution wires. So who's in charge of this market? So I would say in much of the Southwest, Southeast, and Northwest of the US, you will find traditional utility territories. So there will be a single entity, the vertically integrated utility that will own and operate each component of the grid and manage both markets. And there are also regions of the country with competitive wholesale markets. And there are areas where a regional transmission organization, an RTO, or an independent system operator, ISO, being developed and manage the competitive wholesale markets. So usually their job is to make sure the electric supply always equals the demand. So they also manage planning and access to transmission, but they do not own transmission lines themselves. And on the right-hand side, you can see here, utilities still manage distribution. And the supply of the electricity may be through these traditional utilities or through a retail provider in a state where retail choice is enabled. So in Michigan, it falls into this category. And the primary RTO and ISO in Michigan is MISO. You can see the baby blue here is where MISO is operating, while a small portion of the state in the Southwest is served by PJM. And there are a lot of different electric utilities and retailers in the state. And I know many of you in this call actually are in the different utility regions in the state. The most common one, I would say, one is a yellow one you can see here is consumers energy. The other one is a teal color here, which represents DTE Electric Company. At the same time, you might be asking, so what does the grid look like? Is it clean? Is it dirty? Overall, renewable energy provided only 12% of Michigan's net electricity generation in 2022. And wind energy probably accounted for about 2/3 of the power. So you can see here is a non-hydro renewable energy, and this one is hydroelectric. So overall, it isn't that clean in the grid in Michigan. However, many Michigan cities and counties have announced ambitious renewable energy goals. We have seen Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Petoskey, Traverse City, and Washtenaw County. Shout out to Mary. So all these counties and cities have very ambitious renewable energy goals by 2030, 2025, or 2050, or 2040. So what do they mean when they say we want to achieve 100% renewable energy goals or carbon neutrality goals? So the 100% is not like a still number. It is actually a dynamic concept. So overall, a local government's municipal load can be divided into the portion that's powered or offset by renewable energy and the portion that's not, which is called municipal net load. So to get closer to the 100% clean electricity goal or renewable energy goal, cities and counties need to, one, procure more renewable energy, and two, reduce the total municipal load. So a lot of you might have like energy efficiency projects going on that's reducing the total electric load part. And speaking of buying more renewable energy, you might be asking, so how can I do this? My city and counties have never done it before. So usually we'll say by getting renewable energy, you need to procure renewable energy certificate, also known as REC. So one REC represents 1 megawatt hours of renewable energy generated and delivered to the grid. So there are three ways you can get RECs. The first one is unbundled renewable energy certificates. What does it mean? So think about when you are booking a flight, there's a base price of the ticket that covers just getting you from point A to point B. And airlines often offer the option to purchase a carbon offset for an additional fee. So this will offset the environmental impact of your flight. So unbundled RECs are similar to carbon offsets in a way. So you not only purchase the electricity, which is a base flight ticket, and then you have the option to buy a separate REC to offset the environmental impact of your electricity use. It is probably the fastest way to help you achieve your renewable energy projects. But at the same time, it can be controversial because it doesn't necessarily mean there will be new solar or wind farm built in your community. So there's a limited local benefits provided in the state. And the second thing is more intuitive. The second way to get REC is to build on-site solar on the rooftop of your buildings. Like we have seen all of City Hall that have solar panels on top that falls under the number 2 category. And the third approach is to purchase from off-site resources. So for example, you can sign a power purchase agreement, a PPA, with a developer to buy a large-scale renewable energy. And you can also work with utilities to utilize their programs. And you can potentially build a community solar farm. One caveat here is there's currently no community solar policy adopted in the state, but it doesn't mean that you cannot do it. For example, there's a case study of Ann Arbor they create a community solar together with DTE. And the idea is, why it's called community solar? Because it's actually a subscription model. So many users can get solar from one farm based on like how many solar panels they subscribe to. So for Ann Arbor, they're pretty much talk to the utility and say, hey, we want a community solar. Assuming no residents or business subscribe to it, then our local government will get all the remaining output from the solar farm. And that's how they got this project built and kind of, address the issue that there's no community solar policy in the state. If you're interested in knowing more, so I have a link here to this case studies. After the workshop, I'm happy to share the slide deck as well, so you can access a case study. And one thing I want to highlight here is a power purchase agreement. It is probably one of the most popular way for local governments to get solar or wind efficiently. So first of all, the buyers agree to purchase energy generated by renewable energy project at a fixed price over 10 to 25 years. And as you can see in number 2, the electricity from the renewable plant is delivered to the buyer as it is generated. And typically the plant owner also delivers the associated renewable energy certificates, the RECs, to you. And then the renewable energy generated by the project reduces amount of electricity you will need to buy from your normal energy provider, which means that if you can get PPA from this solar farm, then you'll be able to lower your monthly utility bill for your municipal operations. So this is the Energy 101. I want to pause here to see if people have any questions, just in case. And at the same time, feel free to leave your questions in the chat. Awesome. So next part, we'll be talking about how this relates to you all, like with all the great things going on in the state, in the city level. We know there's a lot of different facilities in the city. You might have a water or wastewater treatment plants. You might have airports, a lot of outdoor lighting, office buildings, and like fire stations and so on. Which facility types I should work on first? And the second question is, which energy actions? That there are so many in our toolbox, and which one should we prioritize first? There's all of you might want to electrify the heating and cooling, buying more electric vehicles, and upgrade the energy efficiency in the building. And for the demand flexibility, I will talk about it later. It's more advanced concept at the moment. And you might want to put on solar panels on your rooftop and buy off-site renewables. Just to get the quick, like I'm gonna start sharing for a moment. Please raise your hand if your city or county are thinking about like buying an EV or upgrading your municipal fleet at the moment. You can use a virtual hand as well if that's easier. Awesome. I've seen a few hands. Okay, the next question is, raise your hand if your city or county is thinking about installing solar. Okay. And raise your hand if your city or county is thinking about upgrading the energy efficiency of your office buildings. Okay, I see more hands. And I think, like, for example, Joseph has raised your hands several times, and awesome, that's helpful to know. And let me keep sharing. Awesome. With so many energy actions out there, you might be asking, like, we have limited capacity, we have limited money. I've talked to many local governments in the past, and many of them are like one-person team, and it's impossible to work on so many at the same time. So that's why our team has created a tool called Local Energy Action Framework, LEAF. So the idea is to help local governments find the best way to prioritize clean energy projects, and also use this to figure out which federal funding opportunities are the most relevant to them. So between 2021 and 2023, RMI and 6 local governments have co-created this LEAF to explore this topic. And our cohort members include Alexandria, Virginia, Atlanta, Ann Arbor, Boise, Cincinnati, and Miami-Dade County. So the LEAF model pretty much is to understand how much electricity each municipality will use in a business as usual scenario. For example, we need to figure out how much electricity our local government's currently using, and taking into account any planned project. And some of you might thinking about, adding an on-site solar to the rooftop, and that will be considered a business as usual scenario. And then we prioritize facility types based on which ones are the largest electricity users. And the third step is to prioritize energy actions depending on how each energy action impacts the load profiles and reduces emissions. So for example, how much electricity would I use additionally if I electrify my building's heating system? And how much electricity will be saved if I, improve the energy efficiency in my office buildings? All of this are interacting with each other and kind of affect how much renewable energy you will need in the end to fill the gap. And you might be asking, like, why can't I just do it individually? Why do we need to think about it as a holistic fashion? So first of all, it can help local governments think through, like, identify the biggest opportunities and gaps. And then if we can better align the overall electricity supply and demand, we'll be able to support a high renewable grid and reduce all the costs associated with it. So one thing I want to highlight is that LEAF emphasizes prioritizing local energy actions before moving to an offsite solutions. What do we mean by local? So it can include, electrification, energy efficiency upgrades, on-site solar, and demand flexibility, and which, again, we'll introduce later. And afterwards, we'll be using offsite renewable energy to fill the gap. So I personally have talked to many local government staff, and when I ask them what they want from a clean energy project, a very common word I've heard is local. So maximizing local resource utilization can provide many local benefits for like economic savings, grid development, job creation, climate benefits, and public health benefits. So this is why when we are thinking about utilizing local resources, it is something definitely you want to keep in mind throughout this LEAF process. And another thing is when we were developing this model with the 6 local governments, we focus on mainly the municipal operation side, as opposed to the community-wide electricity forecast. Several reasons. One is we'll be able to get more granular data with just looking at municipal operations. And since all the energy actions is within municipal operations, it's easier for the municipalities to make decisions and implement the clean energy projects. And also it has the opportunity to demonstrate any innovative pilot project idea. And then it has scaling potential, like even though the model was based off the municipal operations, it doesn't mean that you cannot use it for community-wide. It's the same logic, it's just easier to get data. And we have all fun stories about how, like what kind of challenges we had when collecting the data. For example, one of the utilities literally say that, well, we can get you the data, but it would take us a year for us to download all the data for 2019. So all things like that happen, but just compare like relatively getting municipal data is easier than getting a community-wide data. Okay, now let's take a look at some case studies about how this has been done in the past. Another pause here. Any questions at the moment? And Leah and Taylor, I know earlier you raised your hand for the Clean Energy Project survey. And is that also the reason why okay. Awesome. Yeah, you can feel free to put down your hand. Thank you all. Any questions? Cool. Then let's move on. Okay, first of all, I want to hear from you all. Let's still using this annotate feature. Well, Mary, you can feel free, or anyone else who cannot use the annotate feature, feel free to put your answer in the chat. So my question is, what are some factors your city or county will consider when deciding which clean energy projects to focus on first? So this time I want you all to use the text so you can directly type on the screen. Or another way to frame it is like, what made you pick project A over project B when making a decision? I'll give people 2 minutes to think about it. Oh, sorry, let me share again. My bad. Let me help. So I've seen cost in the chat. I think all the costs, people are thinking about the money is probably the number one consideration. And also curious about, I know there are several members here in the call that have received federal funding for their projects, or some of you might be thinking about which federal funding to apply first. So when you're thinking about which one to, what kind of money I should apply for first, what is the main consideration there? Okay, I was thinking about cost, urgency. Grant agreement priorities. So besides, in addition to cost, is there anything else that you all would think about? Safety and reliability. The time, money involved, which is type of cost. Reliability. Level impact on the community. So is that Sean who put that on? For anyone who put that answer about level of overall impact, would you be able to unmute yourself and explain, like, what do you mean by the impact here?
Okay, got it. Just basically how wide-reaching the project would be. Like when we did an LED streetlight conversion of all our streetlights. They're owned by DTE, but that is affecting the entire community with better light. It's saving a huge amount of energy. It is helping with costs for the entire community versus a one-off project like maybe retrofitting the heating and cooling in a park shelter building also needs doing, but it's only affecting one very specific facility or neighborhood.
Yeah, that makes sense. And all of you have mentioned cost, and I feel like Sean mentioned a very good point. It's not only about like the money you put in to build this project, to construct this project, but also like how much money it can help you save after this is finished, and how much, emissions reduction it can bring to your community, like per dollar you spend on this project. And you may be, doing a very cheap project, but it literally did nothing to your emissions reduction or to community benefits, then it might not be a good option either. So thank you all for your great answer. I'm gonna clean this up. Awesome. So the first step of LEAF, all of the considerations is about cost, and all of this requires some numbers to back them up. So I hope you like numbers here, because all the presentation next will be talking about how to do the calculation. So the first step involves building this model. So for example, one thing to consider is how much electricity your city or county is currently using. You might want to pick a benchmark year. And in our LEAF cohort, we picked 2019 because COVID was during COVID, 2021 and 22 were both pretty weird in terms of like how the office building load looked like. So we picked the year before the pandemic just to give a sense that, like, one, we have the data for the year, and two, it looks more normal in a way that it can reflect what the load will look like in the future. And second, there might be some potential increase in load. For example, if you want to change all of your gas appliances to electric ones in your buildings, and you want to buy more electric vehicles, or you want to literally build a new municipal buildings, they will all increase the total load. So you need to take into account all of those projected increase. And then there are some projects that might decrease your load. For example, many of you are working hard to improve the energy efficiency level of your office buildings. And there might be some old buildings being demolished. So you might want to, calculate those projected decrease in load. And the last thing is about renewable energy procurement, because some of your load might be offset by the solar or wind energy your municipalities have procured or will buy in the future. And then this will tell you how much electricity you'll be using on an hourly basis in each facility type, and how this will change like between now and then. So overall, the LEAF model evaluates the impact, as Sean has mentioned, the impact of energy actions on municipal electric loads in each city and county. So here's an example of one of our cohort members, Alexandria, Virginia, how their energy actions have changed their total electricity usage. So actually Ann Arbor's data is very similar to this one. As we can see, so first of all, there's some new buildings construction, which will slightly increase the total electricity usage. And we have electrification that will increase the overall by 13%. And energy efficiency will significantly lower the electricity demand, as well as on-site solar. So demand flexibility pretty much means you want to move some of your load, some of your electricity needs from peak hours to non-peak hours. So you can have more electricity usage when there's actually solar. For example, in the daytime, when the sun's actually shining, you want to use more electricity when the grid is cleaner. And then you want to use the off-site renewable energy sources to fill the gap. This might be a lot of data, but I would say there are two key takeaways I want you to have. The first one is, for many US cities and counties, there might be potential load increase from electrification and new building development, but they can usually be offset by maximizing the energy efficiency upgrades. And second thing is, you might be asking, what if I just put solar panels on every single building of my municipal operations? But the fact is, it's still not enough to achieve 100% clean electricity. You will eventually need off-site renewable energy to fill the gap. So even though we show this data from Ann Arbor and Alexandria, they're pretty similar in a way, but it can vary a lot depending on the city's specific plan in the future, and also the regional differences, like the weather patterns. So we can see here, there's one for Boise, the other for Miami-Dade County. One very interesting thing about Boise is that they have all of a potential increase in the future from new buildings, because they're thinking about building a new water facility and potentially an airport terminal. So those two will definitely increase the city's annual electricity usage. And then you can see Miami-Dade has very little increase in their electrification plans, just because they actually already electrified their office buildings by 2019. And their current electrification plans only includes buying more electric vehicles. So that's why there's very little projected increase in load. And number three is that we all know Florida has a lot of solar energy available. So they also have over 1,000 office buildings in the county. So assuming they can maximize their on-site solar potential, they can decrease their overall electricity usage by over 50%. But the thing is, it's still not enough. They need to buy renewable energy from offsite sources. Okay. We've showed the slide before, but now let's move on to the second step in the LEAF process, which is just to identify which municipal facilities should be prioritized in clean energy planning. So our finding is that water and wastewater treatment plants are often one of the largest electricity users. I think this is not surprising at all to many of you. And those plants usually drive the load shape of the entire municipal operations electricity usage, and they have very large energy efficiency potential. Okay, here are more charts, and just to give you a visual understanding of what it looks like. So we can see that in the 6 cities in the LEAF cohort, the navy blue represents the wastewater and wastewater treatment plants. So they usually play a very important role in driving the municipal daily load shape. So you can see here in the charts for Ann Arbor, Atlanta, Boise, and Cincinnati, they're quite similar. So on the top is the average municipal daily load curve. On the bottom is a water facilities daily load curve. And besides, there are some other big electricity users. If you have a municipal airport, it's often consumes a lot of electricity. Not surprising that Atlanta has a big chunk from airport because they operate one of the biggest airport in the US. And another thing is street lighting, outdoor lighting. So they usually account for, I would say, around 10% on average. Alexandria is a little bit different because the city doesn't have any municipally operated wastewater treatment plants. So that's why the other portions look much bigger than their peer cities. And for Miami-Dade, as I mentioned earlier, it has a lot of office buildings. So they have like over 1,000 different buildings owned by the county. And so that's why it has a great potential for energy efficiency upgrades. So I know many of you are thinking about doing energy efficiency upgrades in your offices, but you might also want to think about whether some other facilities that need to be prioritized first, or among all the office buildings you have, which one actually use the most electricity. Okay, the third step is to determine which energy actions to prioritize. I will say there are several things that we have discussed earlier, but when we think about which energy action to prioritize, one of the questions you want to ask is which energy action can drive more emissions reduction besides the cost piece, assuming like we want to pursue federal funding for one of the projects, like money assuming is now supported by federal funding or other resources. So now the most important piece is emissions impact. So this chart actually shows among the 6 local governments, like which one actually, like for each row is a city. The bigger of a chunk it is, that means more emissions reduction potential this action would bring. So for example, at the first glance, many of the cities, for them, the most efficient way to reduce emissions are on-site solar maximization. But at the same time, like the brown one is building and vehicle electrification. They also accounted for a big part of the city or county's emissions reduction. So one thing I want to call out here is when you electrify your buildings or fleet, it doesn't necessarily mean that it can help you reduce emissions. It really depends on how clean your grid is. So that's why I highly recommend you all, if you can, definitely collaborate with your utilities to ensure the grid is being decarbonized in line with your needs in the future. And under the current emission scenario, just assuming the utility is still doing what they're planning to do in a BAU scenario, then, for example, Boise here, you can see electrification could account for up to 52% of the total carbon emissions reduction. So we still can see that electrification is a very efficient way for you to reduce your municipal emissions. And at the same time, there's one thing you need to be aware of, which is electrify your buildings and fleet might increase your municipal energy bill each month, especially if you're in a very cold area. So here's from this chart, we can see that electrifying your vehicle fleets will increase the total facility load by up to 17%. So in Ann Arbor, this number is 12%. And if you're electrifying your buildings, especially your heating system, then it can increase the total facility load by 9% annually. You might be thinking, 9% isn't as bad as I was thinking, but let's zoom in a little bit to see how this would look like in winter, specifically when you need more heating. So this chart shows that the annual and seasonal impact of heating electrification. So we can see that there will be a significant increase in winter load because you want to electrify the heating system. And some of the cities like Boise, since they're in a relatively cold area, if they electrify the heating system, then the heating electrification is expected to consume more electricity than the building currently uses. So I would say, how can we address this? The answer is, it is very important to electrify heating with efficient technologies, like with the air source heat pumps, to minimize the winter electric load growth. So there are different ways you can electrify heating, but heat pumps is definitely a more recommended one. And another unique thing about LEAF is that it's on an hourly basis. So I know many of you probably haven't started thinking about what my municipal load will look like on an hourly basis, but here's a chart to show you. Usually, all of your wastewater and water treatment plants will operate at night, which means you will have a slightly increase at nighttime, and the load in the daytime will probably be relatively lower. And according to our analysis, actually 60 to 80% of the total electricity consumption will likely occur between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. So during the time when there's no sunlight. So here's the issue. If you want to get solar energy, and it will likely provide electricity when the load is, it probably won't cover any load when you really need it during overnight. So that's why we call this demand flexibility. You might want to move some of your flexible load from overnight to the daytime when there's actually sunlight out there. So some of the loads include water facilities, like if you can operate them in the daytime, and some of the EV charging, if you can charge your cars during the daytime at work, as opposed to only charge it in the evening when you are getting home. That will be a great help for moving the load. So for EV charging, here's an example to show you how powerful it can be to charge your cars in the daytime as opposed to at night. So this is what most cities, the charging load will look like. Many of you will charge your car at home overnight, but at the same time, the yellow line shows when the sunlight will be out and you will have more solar energy. So you're actually charging your car when the grid is dirtier, when there's not so much renewable energy available. But instead, if you can charge more vehicles in the daytime, it's just an assumption, then it can actually help you lower your emissions by 36%. So yeah, another thing in the end about all the key takeaways from our leaf analysis is about renewable energy procurement. As I mentioned before, many of you probably don't have enough roof space or local land to deploy enough on-site solar to power all municipal operations. So you can see from this chart, the yellow part shows how much electricity the on-site solar can provide to the city if all the rooftop space has been utilized and all the land has been utilized. So you can see it's definitely not enough to power 100%. You still need what the teal color shows here to fill the gap. Even in Miami-Dade, it's not enough. So another thing is you might be asking, like, earlier you mentioned the power purchase agreements, but how can I do it? And I never done it before. Our team actually has developed procurement guidance for local governments like you all it's a step-by-step guidance. How long it will take in each step, like what kind of stakeholders I should partner with. If you can just search City Renewables Accelerator, it's free one-stop shop resources for your clean energy development and planning. And as I mentioned here, it's called procurement guidance, just in case you want to learn more about it. Okay, that is a lot of information. I know it can be overwhelming, but just to summarize what I have already said. First of all, water and wastewater facilities are often the largest electricity user, and they have the higher potential for energy efficiency improvements. And then building and fleet electrification can increase the total load by up to 5 to 15% annually. And they also have a lot of impact on emissions reduction. And although municipalities have great potential for on-site solar, it is still not enough to achieve 100% clean electricity without off-site renewable energy. And then sometimes you might want to think about implement demand flexibility, like moving your flexible loads to the time period when there's more solar available, and or procure wind power because it's more reliable throughout the day to fill this remaining gap. And yeah, here's just an overall summary. And let's just take a 10-minute break because I know it's a long workshop, but at the same time, I'll be staying on in case you have any questions. So let's come back, maybe I said 8 minutes, let's come back at 2:15 Eastern time. Yeah. At the same time, feel free to ask me any questions you have.
I do actually have a question. So it kind of look, and this might, I don't know if this is a generalization that can be made, but other than building electrification, or especially like heating electrification, is there a general correlation between like emissions reductions and cost savings between like with these kinds of activities?
Do you mean like cost savings, like how much, whether the more emissions it can reduce, the more cost it can save? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, is that kind of like a general assumption you can make about these kinds of activities outside of like heating electrification?
So for the electrification, it's a little bit tricky because you're not actually saving the cost in the short term because many of the equipment like heat pumps, it needs a lot of upfront cost investment. And that's why it's important to utilize, tax credits to do it. But at the same time, in the long term, it can help save money. But it's more like you need to think about how much electricity is, currently cost in your city, and like how much you are originally paid for your energy. I know many of the office buildings have natural gas. So like how much is a natural gas price compared to electricity? So it really depends on city, but I would say cost wise, it's without tax credits, I feel like it's not
Right.
super affordable for municipalities, but
Mhm.
it can definitely save money in the long term.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Sure.
If anybody else has questions, either now or when you come back from taking a quick break, feel free to just jump in or even put questions in the chat too, if that's more comfortable for you. Okay, we've got a couple minutes before we get to 2:15, but if you're just coming back, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in and speak up or drop them in the chat if that's more comfortable for you. Okay, we're at 2:15. Ying, feel free to start up again whenever you want. If you want to give people another minute, go for it. Or if you want to jump in, you're welcome to.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. So how's everybody feeling after I dump all the information to you earlier with all the visualization? Like, give me an emoji using the Zoom feature. Show me how you're feeling right now. And thank you for being here with me for, it's actually the longest workshop I have ever hosting / facilitating. So, I saw Nick's emoji. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you all. But yeah, I know it can be a lot of things to digest at the moment. I don't blame you because just as a background, to create a leaf model I just showed you, the 6 local governments I mentioned actually spend over a year on this with RMI. Just it takes a long time to collect data, to do the analysis. And the Excel model we used actually was like 50 megabytes. So every time I open an Excel, it will crash my computer. And this is how big the data analysis is. And so our goal is to that we can go through the process. So you all don't need to, do all of the complicated calculations again. But just in case you want to know how we did it, I'll keep it very simple. Just creating your own leaf. One thing makes our leaf model very complicated and why the Excel file is so big is that it's actually an hourly load analysis, which means, each year has 8,760 hours. So for each model, we have over 8,000 rows in it just to show you like what each building is consuming every hour. So that's why it's like such a big analysis. But the overall logic is here. You know how much you are currently using and how much you will be using additionally, how much load will be decreased, and how much renewable energy you are thinking about getting. And then they will get you to how much electricity you will be using by the target year. Most of the leaf cohort cities picked 2030 because many of them have a goal to achieve like a certain target by 2030. But you can pick 2050 if you feel more comfortable with that. And it doesn't need to be hourly analysis for you if that's not your top priority at the moment. You can just be an annual analysis just to get a overall sense. Okay, here's the fun part. I'm going to show you this 50 megabytes Excel model. You don't need to look into details, just to show you what it looks like. I hope you like Excel. Okay, so as you can see, this is a overall Excel file. On the bottom, you can see there are a lot of tabs. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. I think there are almost 20 different tabs. But the most important thing, again, after the workshop, I'm happy to share this Excel file with you. The original data was Ann Arbor's city model, so it's more relevant to you all. But I have did some modification to the data, so it's not the original Ann Arbor data, but you can still use it as a reference if you want to, kind of get a sense of, okay, what an office building load will look like in a day or something like that. So you can see some of the tabs are color-coded. All the color-coded data, color-coded tab are the ones you really need to, be aware of. The first one is the intro tab. If you get lost in the tab, here's a nice visual to show you how the tabs are related to each other. Again, you don't need to dive into the detail, but just FYI. And there are 2 parts, I would say, generally to this. 2 parts of this model. One is that assuming we don't do anything extra, we just keep doing what our city is currently doing and, finish what we're planning to do in the next 10 years or so. What will happen by 2030? And the second part is, what if we do something, like what if we push ourselves to do more? That's what we call the what if analysis. So the first part is a BAU analysis. and the second part is what if analysis. What if we actually electrify every building? What if we actually put a solar on every single rooftop of the municipal buildings? What will happen? So the green tabs are the BAU analysis, and the blue part is the what if analysis. So all you need to enter in is like, there's a lot of automatic calculations in the model, and you don't need to worry about that at all. All you need to do is to find tab 1.1 BAU inputs and 2.1 what if analysis inputs. And there are some of the cells are in green. You can just find them and enter the values that are relevant to you. So what kind of data we ask for cities and why it took so long for us? Here you can see why. So here is a 1.1 BAU inputs. State you can pick Michigan, there's some general information. The climate zone is cold, and the base here is you can pick 2019 or last year, the target year 2030. Okay, the second section is about on-site solar projects. Like how much solar energy our city is planning to build, how much has already been built. So those are two important numbers to have. And here's the offsite renewable energy projects. I think many of you, this number will be 0, but for Ann Arbor, for example, they were thinking about they already have a community solar project and several other offsite sources coming up. So if you're planning anything in the future, this is a section you need to fill out, like whether you're thinking about solar or wind, like if it's wind, if it's solar, like it is like a fixed solar panel or is it like a tracker? How big is a solar panel? And for the resource potential, it's just default. I already put in here. You can refer to the map on the right here to understand like which category you are. Like in Michigan, it's 4 for the solar potential. And which year do you think this project will be online? And then there's your plan for building energy efficiency, like how much electricity you think will be saved, like from this project, and like which project there are. And also other energy efficiency improvement plans. What we usually see is street lighting, LED conversion, or some projects like that. Or if you have any airport, there might be some airport efficiency upgrades or waterwork efficiency upgrade. And like building electrification plans between now and 2030. How many, like, do you want to electrify 50% of your buildings? Do you want to electrify everything, or do not include this facility type in your calculation? And do you have any buildings that need to be demolished in the future, or demolished? And here's your current municipal fleet. This actually took some time for some of the cities to collect because it requires collaborating with multiple departments. Each department has their own fleet number. You know like what type of vehicles they are, like how the daily miles traveled. Some of them are just estimates, and how many cars there are in total. And let's see how many cars there are right now and how many there will be in the future. And the next part is the biggest data input here. It is the representative facility and renewable energy project. What does it mean? So originally when we started the cohort, in the ideal world, we would like the city to ask the utility for a list of load profile data for every single building owned by the city. But soon we realized that it's actually pretty difficult, and many utilities are like, you can download the data, but there are like 2 million data entries that require you to download manually, and that's not gonna happen. So instead, what we did is to pick a few representative buildings. For example, like your city might have 20 small office buildings, like 5 medium office buildings, 1 large 20 fire stations or like 15 parks. So for each building category, you just picked one that's like you feel like more like typical size of that type, and just get the hourly data for that one building, and then you can just scale it up or down to see, you know, what the entire building facilities load will look like. But here you can just, I still keep the data here. I made some modification to the enable data, so you can still get a sense of what they will be like. And another thing we would like you to fill out is a 2.1, what if analysis. Be bold here. Like, what if we actually electrify every single building, or if it like improved our office energy efficiency by 30% across the city, what will happen? So all of them here is like assumption, something you might not be able to achieve in the short term, but just to give you a sense of what will happen, like compared to the BAU scenario, what's the biggest difference? So we highly recommend people to, you know, maximize on-site solar here, because we want to maximize the local resources. And also, do you want to procure any additional offsite renewable energy? Do you want to move any of your flexible load to a different time period? Do you want to add any battery storage? Again, I would say I would call this a more advanced mode or hardcore mode. But you can feel free to play around to see how this will make your model different. Okay, and the purple tab is a summary tab. This is the most important tab among all. So you can see many of the charts we used in my presentation are actually from this tab. You can just easily like check or uncheck any number to show how this will, like, what if analysis will make a difference to the final results. Like, what if actually maximizing on-site solar versus what if we just keep doing what we're currently doing? And here's a, you know, the load impact summary, and how far are we from a 100% clean electricity goal, what my daily load curve will look like, and how much electricity does each facility type use, and which facility type has the biggest electricity saving potential. Yeah, there's a lot of information there. I'm gonna share this file with you all after the workshop. So let me know, like email me if you have any questions, or if you actually start thinking about trying to build your own model, if you have the time. So I'm gonna pause here, and next I'm gonna do a quick breakout room discussion. And the prompt here, because I've been talking for so long, I want to hear, actually let you guys to connect with each other to see like what kind of things you have learned. So I'm going to put the prompt in the chat. So imagine you are tasked with creating a model to estimate your city or county's electricity usage in 2030. Number one question, what do you think will be the most significant challenges in building and using this model? And number two, what are some potential strategies to address them? So Danielle, it'd be great if you can help me create a breakout room. It can be a random 2 or 3 in each room.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah, I will do 3 breakout rooms. It's gonna automatically assign you.
you.
There we go. And then I think I'm gonna leave the co-hosts out of the breakout rooms, but I think we can jump into any of them at that point.
Sounds good.
So, yeah, okay, in just a couple seconds, so you're gonna be in a breakout room. You might have to click a button on your screen that says, yes, go into the breakout room.
Yeah, let's come back at 2:40. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put the prompt in the chat so you can access anytime. All the people are like, putting I had 1 to 2 people on their team, and I'm just surprised they got to, you know, still able to create such a model, but they literally need to spend all the time engaging with the utilities, all back and forth on this. So that's why I'm sharing some of the lessons learned we have. But yeah, great discussion there, and thank you for sharing in the chat. So the first lessons learned we have was definitely request the data early on. You will never imagine what kind of response your utility will give you. Like we literally had hosted a session about talking about your experience working with your utilities. And it's a pretty fun session just to hear about all the cities and counties complain about the utility services. And sometimes it takes them forever to update the system or get back the data the city or county would need. So never too late to, start this process. No, never too early to start this process. And another thing is your city or county might have a lot of different facilities, but I would say start data collection from the large electricity users. If you have a wastewater facility plan, I will start from there. And another idea is just to, as I mentioned before, collect hourly data of just one single building, a typical building, and scale it up. It will be more efficient than trying to get multiple buildings data. And then if there's no data available, there's one data set that's very useful for us, which is NREL's Comstock data. So it's by state and county. You can literally go to your county's data and find out what a typical office load will look like in your county. So just if you really have no method to figure it out, I think this will be a good estimate to give you just an overview. Okay, the last section here, we talked a lot about how to use the data, how to do the calculations. But why do we need to do this? I think the very important reason right now is it's never a better time to do clean energy projects right now. Because as we all know, it's a great time for the government to invest in these projects. And as you can see, the climate-related federal funding has almost tripled compared to 10 years ago. For example, the new funding through the Inflation Reduction Act can help local governments unlock a historic level of climate investment that may have previously been out of reach for you all. And many of you mentioned that cost is the #1 consideration when deciding which clean energy projects you will be working on. But when there are so many funding sources out there that can definitely help you address a lot of cost concern over there. And I would say LEAF helps determine the priority facilities and energy actions in municipal plans. But what's next? And you can see on this screen, there's an equation that shows how local governments can achieve the potential impact by investing time, capacity, and resources in your priorities. And the current situation is time and capacity have not changed significantly, but resource and funding available to local governments has increased a lot. And to help cities and counties navigate the federal funding, RMI actually created a tool called America's Federal Funding Opportunities and Resources for Decarbonization, or AFFORD. We love acronyms, so that's why we came up with this super long name. And if you just search RMI AFFORD, you can see this is a very comprehensive database for you to filter out all the federal funding opportunities out there and align with your own city and county's priorities. So how does it work? So it's different from many other databases out there because it will actually ask you why you want to apply for federal funding and what is the focus you have. So first of all, they will ask you, are you new to this federal funding? If so, they will provide this funding guidance for you to take a closer look. And then you can show them indicate your organization type and what type of project you are most interested in based on your priorities. And are you interested in grant or technical assistance or loan or other incentives? And then it will show you all the opportunities that are relevant to you. What's great about this tool is that it can actually compare different opportunities out there. So I'm sure some of you might, before you applied for a credit card, you look at NerdWallet and see the different features of credit card, like which one is better for you. So you can literally compare different federal funding opportunities there to see which one is a better fit. And there are several opportunities I want to highlight here, just in case your local governments haven't, been aware of it. The first one is a $2 billion community change grant. So this is a super flexible funding specifically provided to community-based organization, but you are also eligible if you are partnering, like as a local government, you are partnering with a community-based organizations. And the applications are reviewed on a rolling basis. And some of you might be asking, that sounds risky. What if it's already oversubscribed? But the fact is, at the end of last April, EPA actually hosted a webinar on this opportunity, and they indicated that, so this entire application was open last year, and it's will be open for 12 months. But there still have plenty of capacity left, and it's not close to oversubscription. So if your city or county have any cool project idea that you want to partner with, any CBO partners, I would highly recommend you, checking out this opportunity. And the evaluation criteria is actually pretty flexible. So you just need to address at least one climate action strategy and one pollution reduction strategy. As you can see here, it's a pretty comprehensive list, which touches almost every single aspect of a city's sustainability projects. So, and I would say try to build a partnership with the CBO and apply as soon as possible. One pro tip, even if you apply and get rejected, you can actually get feedback from EPA and you are able to apply again. So I would say it's actually recommended to apply this early. And yeah. And the second thing is, another good news is community project funding, previously known as earmarks, it will return every year, probably during the springtime. And the financial year 25 application process will open in spring 2025. And usually the proposals will be submitted in March and April, and the submission deadline will be in May 2025. So this funding is to support any shovel-ready and shovel-worthy projects with clear demonstrations of community support and compelling needs. It sounds pretty vague, right? But the reality is they actually funded a variety of different clean energy projects. Just to give you a sense of what Michigan cities have done. So Leone Township actually had used this funding to support their wastewater treatment plant improvement in financial year 22. They got over $3 million through this opportunity. Ann Arbor utilized $25 million through the community project funding to support their community solar project. And Royal Oak, Michigan actually uses money to enhance their farmers market as a community resiliency hub. I remember earlier someone mentioned they want to do a resiliency related work as well. So they will be a great opportunity to utilize. Yeah, I would say next step is to engage your congressional delegations as soon as possible to make the case for your request and get them excited. And another thing I think many of you might already be aware of, but might not be super, haven't really utilized it yet, which is the clean energy tax credits. So the Inflation Reduction Act has expanded 2 tax credits that have been super important for financing clean energy projects. One is a production tax credit, section 45, and the other is investment tax credit, section 48, and both has been extended to 2035. You might not be familiar with the difference between the two. I would say the production tax credit is you can get the tax credits every year based on how much electricity is generated. So it's better to utilize this tax credit if you have a very large wind farm or super large solar farm. But if you're just thinking about doing something small scale, like municipal on-site solar, you actually want to utilize the thing on the right, the investment tax credits. And one thing to note is that now the ITC, the investment tax credits, actually includes standalone energy storage for the first time. So if your city or county ever thinks about doing storage, and now is a great time to do it. How does it work? So starting from last year, all the federal tax credits for the clean energy actually have adders to help further lowering the upfront cost of all energy clean energy tax credit, clean energy projects. So first of all, if you want to utilize ITC and you can already fulfill the prevailing wage requirements, your base rate will be 30% of the total system cost, the upfront cost. And then you can get, if you can utilize domestic content, then you can get up to 10%. And if it's located in energy communities, I think if you just Google the tax credit energy communities, there will be a map online for you to figure out which areas qualified as energy communities. If it's located in this energy communities, then you can get up to 10%. And if your project can financially benefit low-income or tribal communities, you can get additional 20%. Or if this just simply located in low-income or tribal communities, then it will be 10%. So the last category is here, the low-income tax credit is the only one that's application-based. So I would say like try to apply early, but at the same time, since you're a local government, you actually have an advantage to have a better shot to get it, because there are many private companies who want to apply for this credit, but since they're a private company, they actually don't fall under any special criteria, evaluation criteria. So I will highly recommend local governments to utilize those adders. And I already also created direct pay. And many of you might know that in the past, local governments simply cannot utilize clean energy tax credits because you all don't owe any taxes. But now you can actually get clean energy tax credits through a cash payment if you are qualified. So that actually allows local governments to utilize those clean energy tax credits for the first time. So it's actually such a big news that this will significantly help lower the total upfront cost of a project. Okay, we're almost at time, but I still want to have a fun case studies for you all to help you understand why this is such a big deal. And let's take a look at Pawnee, Indiana, since I'm a huge Parks and Rec fan. So assuming like your city is like Indiana, they want to build a 4 megawatts community solar project on a brownfield pit. And it is estimated to be a $10 million project. And Pawnee hopes this project to be primarily serving low-income residents. How does this tax credits will be, what like breakdown will look like? So first of all, in this procurement, Pawnee will give more points to local installers. So like Swanson's very good sum. Since they will be paying prevailing wage and source from US manufacturers, this deal can actually get $3 million in tax credits and also additional $1 million since they will be sourcing from US manufacturers. And since the pit is a brownfield, it used to be like a landfill project, but now it's turning into a solar farm. So it qualifies under the energy communities provision. So this deal can get additional $1 million. And beyond that, Pawnee is designing this program to primarily serve low-income residents, so they can get $2 million. So with a direct pay and all the tax incentives, Leslie Knope is now able to reduce their project cost from $10 million down to potentially $3 million and re-energize Pawnee. So just to give you a sense of like why this is so powerful, and you should definitely learn more about the tax credit adder if you haven't. And just to summarize what we have talked about today, a lot of information. So first of all, definitely utilize leave to figure out which projects you should prioritize and consider how they can benefit disadvantaged communities. And you can use a Ford tool to identify any relevant federal funding opportunities. And then you will want to align your priority projects with the funding programs in the context with community strategies. And then again, collaborate with internal and external stakeholders during the planning and other project phases. There will be a lot of data you want to collect. There might be a lot of senior leaders you want to convince. So it's never, it's always the great strategy to start early. And then secure buy-in from key decision makers and inform them of upcoming the funding opportunities. For example, direct pay is definitely underutilized by many local governments, and the community funding, the earmarks I mentioned earlier is also something many cities are not aware of. That's why I kind of want to show this to you so you can remember and kind of bring this up to your boss in the future meetings and just like make them aware of all the great things that's happening and why your city and county should start early. Okay, so I want to have a quick checkout question here. Since we talked a lot and but I'm curious to know, what is one thing you learned today that you think will benefit your future work? So please type in the chat directly. Start by saying, today I learned that. And I'll give people just 1 minute. Thank you, Catherine. Awesome. Some people learn about the adders and the importance of scheduling EVs charging to optimize its use during the peak sometimes. Awesome. Keep the answers going, and at the same time, I'm going to pass it over to Danielle to wrap this up.
All right. Thank you so much, Yuning, for this awesome presentation. I learned a lot. We specifically reached out to RMI for this because we feel like the LEAF framework is kind of like the Rolls Royce of this kind of of like models here that to work with, but hopefully regardless of your community's capacity, you're able to have some good key takeaways here from like, all of the steps and considerations that you want to make when doing some energy planning here. So hopefully, and hopefully too, the LEAF framework is not just aspirational, but is possible for some of our communities too. So I do want to note, so Yuning also just dropped a feedback form into the chat. If you want to, please fill that out. I'll also send out a follow-up email by the end of this week, and it's going to have a link to that Google folder again, where a copy of this presentation will be in there, and the Excel document that Yuning shared as well. And there'll be a link to the recording from this as well. I did also just want to note in our last session, we will be talking with, we'll be talking exclusively about funding and whatnot. So we've invited Michigan Saves to be there. It's Michigan's Green Bank. And they are currently working on a bridge loan option specifically for those direct pay / tax credits, where they will basically front you the money to pay for the amount that you will eventually get back in tax credits. Because at the end of the day, you still have the upfront cost. So that's something that we're going to touch on at the June 26th session as well. So between now and the June 12th meeting, same time on Zoom, We'll send you a follow-up email, like I said. We'll kind of have a couple things that we'll want you to maybe think about or look into between now and that next session. And the next session will be Meridian Township and Oakland County joining us to talk about their decarbonization plans and strategies, as well as their renewable energy deployment, to learn from some local examples here and learn from our peers. So if you have any questions, feel free to stick around for another minute or two if you want to ask them. Otherwise, thank you all so much for coming, and we'll see you on June 12th. Always reach out if you have any questions at any point too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Danielle. I will send you all the files I promised you.